and he came up with an interesting philosophy or an interesting thought about religion. And he said that there's two basically things that give you restlessness in your soul, right? In your soul. Number one is you don't know your purpose. You don't know where you're going. You don't know your mission. So alhamdulillah, as Muslims, we know this from day one, right? We know that our purpose is to worship Allah. We want to get into Jannah. So we're set on this. Alhamdulillah, we're a lot better off than a lot of people. They spend their whole lives trying to figure out what's the purpose of life. We know the purpose of life is to worship Allah, to get to Jannah. Now we can move on to actually doing it, right? But he said the second stressor is that now you know your mission, you know where you want to go, but you have to wait to get there. And that waiting and that, is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen later? Like, let's say you're making dua to Allah for a new job, or for a wife, or for whatever it is. And I remember when I was looking to get married, years I was looking and going through rishtas and all these things. And it was stressing me out. And I knew that Allah would send me. I knew it. I knew it would happen. But just that stress of not knowing when it's going to happen, it's, putting a burden. Allah will do it. You're positive. In the end, after all this stuff, Allah brought my wife to me. She moved from here to Piscataway, New Jersey. And then, alhamdulillah, I didn't, Brother Tanweer actually, he came and told me, I had this girl I want you to meet. And I said, no. She told me she's Egyptian. I said, sorry, I'm Egyptian, so I said, no. And he said, no. And then I just kept saying no. So he went to my dad. Directly to my dad. And my dad forced me to go meet her. And after the end of the day, she heard the same thing. She didn't want to marry an Egyptian. So that's why Tanweer thought it would be perfect. And when we showed up to her house for the rishta, her dad didn't tell her we were coming. She said, there's some people coming over, because she knew she wouldn't even meet me. So alhamdulillah, Allah brought us together even though we didn't even want to meet. And subhanAllah, but that stress of just not knowing, it's stress, and it puts some hardship on us. So what can we learn from the Prophet ﷺ? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِذَا قَالَ رَجُلٌ أَهْلَكَ النَّاسِ فَهُوَ أَهْلَكُهُم. If a man says that, we're all ruined, or, everybody's ruined, we're all ruined, he is the most ruined out of all of them. What is this telling us? That if a person is negative about a situation, we're all this and that, he is actually the worst one in that situation. Because we should try as much as possible to be positive. To have this hope and be positive about the outcome. That doesn't mean that we're going to be positive about everything. Like, I might be positive about my outlook on my kids or something like that. But when it comes to job, I'm stressed about it. That's fine. You could be positive in different things. But positivity is a learned thing. Actually, they did a study on identical twins. And they found that they wanted to see, is it genetic, right? If you take two identical twins who were born in separate areas, they were separated at birth, they had complete different circumstances, how much of it is the same? And they found that it was only 25% was genetic. The rest of the 75% was their own experiences that contributed to whether they were positive or negative in life. So it's something that we can learn. It's something that we can kind of adopt in ourselves. Does anybody have any situations that was, for instance, stressing them out, and they learned to kind of overcome that, be positive about it? Anybody have any Ghulam?
Last night I could not sleep well because I came to know that my plumber replaced my water heater without a permit. Several years ago, I went to the township and they told me they are still planning to give me $2,000 fine. So I didn't know about it. I don't know about the rules and all. So this is fresh in my mind. So they're asking me. So I couldn't figure out anything about it. I couldn't sleep last night. But then I said, what will happen? They said one of us had to pay. I said, all right. Either he or I will pay for it. And maybe inshallah Allah will give me, and Allah gives me. So that's not that.
That's good. Anybody else? Abdullah?
How did you figure out doing a permit?
Oh, because inspection. So planning to rent that house out. So the inspector came and said, "Where's the permit? You should place a permit."
Oh
No,
my god.
no permit.
I might be in a similar situation then.
Everybody's having permit troubles. That's Tamara, tell me a story. When you thought something was bad and then you managed to put a positive spin on it.
I think probably some of us face the same thing when we're having an employer or a client who seems to be very difficult.
Mm.
And one time I had one of the clients. It was very difficult, and back then it was like 10 years ago. And I reached to the VP and just mentioning that this lady is very difficult.
Mm.
Every time I come out of the meeting, I'm turning red because I'm mad. It was like 10 years ago, I think. And then he was very positive about it. He said, "You know what? You should be positive." I was like, "What's positive? How could you be positive about this?" And he said, "Every time you come out of the meeting, thank God that she's not your wife."
That's a good one. Like smiling.
I don't know if you guys heard that. We'll leave it off the recording. So, subhanAllah, this is amazing. I'll give you a story. One of my bosses, she was actually I was telling her about Ramadan. It was a time for Ramadan, and I was telling her about Ramadan and how what we do. And then she's Catholic, and they have a month of fasting called Lent, and for her fasting, she would pick one thing to fast. People sometimes pick chocolate or TV or whatever. But she says, I stopped doing that years ago, picking these material things. I started working on personality things. So she said, I had one coworker who was really just terrible person. Everybody hated him. He's always grumpy, always. She said, I decided I'm going to I'm going to work on him for a month. So she said, every day that month, I sent him like a card or a candy or chocolate, or I said something nice to every single day for the whole month. I did something nice to him, And she said, at the end of the month, he was like a completely changed person with me. He was so nice, and he was always asking how I'm doing, and she said, to this day, we still keep in touch. He was just he completely changed just by being nice to him. And this is in the Quran, it says, إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِهِ أَحْسَنَ السَّيِّئَةِ. When somebody does something sayyi'ah or bad to you, defend yourself, defend yourself with something better, with الَّتِهِ أَحْسَنَ, the thing that's better. So you're defending yourself from this harshness by being nice. And then so Allah continues, if there's some sort of enmity between you, some sort of enemyship between you, he will become as if he's your best friend. So subhanAllah, positivity, being nice to somebody will actually have not just the results of defending yourself, but actually turning a person around from being... Yeah.
No, there's some noise in the background.
There's some noise in the back. People are saying they can't hear. Is that okay? So, what do we talk about smiling? We talk about smiling is Sunnah, right? We said that it's the Prophet ﷺ himself used to smile more than anyone else. We said that smiling is a sadaqah, right? You get extra charity from smiling. We said that smiling is part of the fitrah, right? You start out smiling as a kid over 500 times. And then we get older, we start less smiling, right? We talked about how being positive is part of the Sunnah. And the Prophet ﷺ was positive. And we talked about other things. Does anybody have any questions?
What was that study again? The
Which one?
twins thing?
So they took twins, identical twins, so they have the same genes, but they were born separated at birth. So one was for instance, sent to parents in California, and the other one was sent to parents in New Jersey. So they lived completely separate lives. And this is how they do actually a lot of psychology stuff. When they want to test genetics, how much genetics plays into a personality, they do one of these studies. And they found that the positivity aspect was only 25% genetic. Like, for instance, well, the one in California was very positive, 75% of the time. The other one was very negative. So they found that, in all these studies, that genes has some contribution, a little bit, but most of it has to do with our own thought and our own personality and our own way of thinking. The way we think about things, the way we act in life. SubhanAllah, like the way we are with our wives and our kids, so much of it has to do with the perspective that we come into it. I'll give you an example. Like, I got married at 30, right? So I lived a long life single and then got married, right? So my perspective on marriage is very different from the person who got married at 21 or 20 and had kids right away, and then he kind of like, when he's 30 or 40, he starts going through midlife crisis and, and thinking about, I know somebody who's going through midlife crisis right now. I won't name him, he's sitting in the front. Got married a little bit earlier, had kids right away, all this stuff, so, maybe he didn't get to go through all the experiences of somebody who went through all these experiences and then finally got married. And so now it's like, I remember somebody was talking about like, back in the day when people were young, they used to joke about, other spouses or whatever. I'm like, do you really want to go through that again? Like, it took me 7-8 years to find the right spouse, to find the right wife who I could live with. I'm not going to go through that process again. Forget it, me and my wife, alhamdulillah, when I go into that perspective, I'm going in from somebody who lived a really long life single and had a lot of, trying to find the right person and found the right person. So coming from that perspective, now I can go in like, okay, how do we make this even better? How do we make this, take this to even a better level? Or even when you have kids, like let's say, for instance, that you, we found this example, right? Let's say, so Brother Tanweer, an easy example. So Tanweer's first 2 kids, mashallah, very calm, very quiet. They sit and study, some will study, mashallah. So they think, mashallah, this is very easy. 3rd kid comes, active child. Wants to run around like, what's going on? Oh my God, For me, it was the opposite. So perspective changed, right? For me, my first son, very active. Just running, bouncing off the walls, just running active. So second child, we were just constantly making dua, Allah, give us a quiet child, give us a calm child, We named him Suhail, so his name means, calm, a calm, easygoing child. So when we get the second child, and alhamdulillah, he is a little bit calmer, we're just like, oh, mashallah, this is amazing. Oh, it's so relaxing. That's so good, Different perspective just because of where we were. This is actually a psychological term called anchoring. It's anchoring. So what happens is, like let's say for instance you go to bargain for a car, right? Or I'm selling you this. I'm selling you this sign, okay? I'm gonna sell it to you for $50. Now bargain with me. What are you gonna say? $30, okay? And then we meet at 40, right? That's anchoring. I started out at a high number, ultra high number, so now he's thought, okay, maybe I can go down to like 30 or 40. If I said, I'm going to sell it to you for $10, it's probably only worth $5. If I said, I'm going to sell it to you for $5, then he's going to say, okay, $3, $4, meet at 4. So anchoring, basically, a lot of our thoughts start by where we started out from the beginning. So if I started out with a very high number, I anchored you to that number. And now you can go up and down and negotiate, right? So when we think of things, our mentality, our biases, have a lot to do with just these silly kind of experiences, right? Can we give me an example?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You might, maybe we don't have an answer to it right now,
Mhm.
but that's sometimes in the thing, there's always a balance of things, right? You look at the parents and the children, there's a balance between the rights of the parents and the rights of the children.
Yeah.
And so obviously, I completely agree. There has to be, positive and smiling and whatnot. But there's also hadith I remember. I think, if I'm not mistaken, someone correct me, please. Something to the effect of like, if we were to remember death more often, we would laugh less and we would cry more.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously, there's times to be serious as well, and there has to be a balance between the two. So how should we strike that balance whereby, we're taking things seriously as it should be, but at the same time, we're still positive?
That's a very good question, right? So the hadith is like, if we remember death, we would laugh less and frown more. So the answer to that is to look at the Prophet ﷺ himself and look at how he implemented it, because he's the ultimate person who implemented. He's the biggest sheikh, more than me or anybody else, right? Or anybody. So how did he implement the Quran and his Sunnah? He implemented it by always smiling by default, right? Always being happy and joyful by default. But when it came time to, for instance, there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ only became angry when it had something to do with Islam, when it's something against Islam. If something personal happened to him, he never got angry about it, right? Somebody did something or hit him or did all these things, he never got angry. It was only if they